When you think of Only Built for Cuban Links, it's like it's a Raekwon record, but Ghostface is so much a part of that record. It's kind of the combination. And then when you get to Ghostface, you know, Ray's all over those records, and so it's kind of the same thing. I mean, will we ever have a spinoff? Who knows?
You can't keep doing what you're doing.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Luke, this season, is a little bit more raw. Like, I feel like last season he was sort of finding his way. He's really being nice to everybody. This season he's a little more hardcore. Am I wrong in that, or?
Well, it's not as much that he's hardcore, but it's just like we're trying to establish who Luke Cage is. You have to establish a baseline, and then once you establish that baseline, then you can kind of make the departures. So so compare him to like Syfy from A Tribe Called Quest. You know, when you first hear People's Instinctive Travels in the Path of the Rhythm, there's one fight, but by the time you hear the Syfy in Low End Theory, he's got a certain brio and a certain kind of punch. Yo, microphone check, like, you know, there's a certain kind of enthusiasm that you didn't hear the first record, and so that's who I would compare Luke to, is that like he's like on the scene in a way with a certain confidence, swagger, and energy that it took the first season to establish. And I think the thing is that when people, you know, wanted to kind of talk about who they thought Luke Cage was, and they would kind of criticize the show, they would say, oh, well, you know, Luke doesn't really have a personality. I think all those kinds of criticisms will really disappear, because you really kind of will get a sense of Mike Coulter as a man, in addition to being the actor, is that he already, I felt, visually and emotionally embodied Luke Cage season 1, but this season he goes even deeper.
And you set up some other teams that people and characters from the comics I'm a huge fan of. You set up Daughters of the Dragon, episode 3. It's a classic Colleen Wing, Misty Knight fight scene. They're even dressed the same. Are we gonna get a Daughters of the Dragon? Are we pushing for that?
Well, you know, the thing is, it's like, it's kind of like Wu-Tang. It's like, you know, when you get like Raekwon and Ghost on a song, eventually, you know, even though they never actually came out with a record together, it's like, you know, they're featured so prominently on each other's records that it's kind of like, you know, when you think of Only Built for Cuban Links, it's like it's a Raekwon record, but Ghostface is so much a part of that record. It's kind of the combination. And then when you get to Ghostface, you know, Ray's all over those records, and so it's kind of the same thing. I mean, will we ever have a spinoff? Who knows? I mean, hopefully this is popular enough, you know, season 2, that people will really want that. But at the same time, it's just like we're just jazzed about the fact that they're vibing off each other in such a cool way.
Who is going to be, if we get a season 3, who is going to be the season 3 baddie? Is it going to be Annabelle Shiora's character, or is it going to be Tilda, Nightshade?
Hard to say. I mean, the thing is, where we leave season 2, there's so many possibilities. Like, one of my favorite shots of the entire season is the long tracking shot that we have when Rakim is performing, and we're going with the camera across the club. And we're basically featuring, like, these are all the people that you're going to see potentially in a 3rd season if the show is popular enough. And then we rise up to the balcony where Luke Cage has taken, you know, Cottonmouth's perch. And the big surprise is not that, okay, Luke is up there being stoic and being like, okay, having regrets and how did I end up here? It's more like he's digging being the king of Harlem's Paradise, which is scary, because then it makes you really think, did we really know this dude in the first place? And when you get to that last moment when he says, you know, send Claire home, like, it's really one of those kind of personality turns where it really, in a certain way, makes you fear for Luke. It makes you think, okay, was Misty right in saying that? Can you really be, you know, in this and not be affected by it? Or as DW says in The Barbershop, you know, if you control crime, you're a crime boss. Like,
and the crime boss shot, the classic Michael Corleone shot at the end where Missy's outside the office and she looks back, and he's got sugar whispering in his ear, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah,
well, I mean, I'm a huge Francis Ford Coppola fan. You know, Spike Lee, Francis Ford Coppola, Oliver Stone. are probably like some of my biggest influences as writer-directors. And also, of course, I would also include Ava DuVernay on that list because visually, like some of the shots that she had in Selma, it's like if I had the opportunity to direct, I mean, like these are definitely people that I would reference. Thing is that with Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather is one of those movies that I constantly go back to because there are so many, you know, underpinnings of family and power, and we're able to visually do that. And that moment that we have where the door closes on Misty was really a deliberate homage to the moment at the end of Godfather 1 when the door closes on Kay. And that look, and even the way we set up the camera with her looking at Luke and him at the desk and somebody closing the door, it was just like...
Yeah, I yelled out loud.
Yeah, like like it's one of those things where people see it, like if they're fans of The Godfather, they're going to be like, yo. And then the other thing that's interesting was when Mike was in the suit in Cottonmouth's perch, looking out on the club. One of the secrets of the show is anybody who's on that perch controls the club and controls Harlem. So the musical choices in the club will be reflected by who's on that perch, which is why it's Gary Clark Jr. and Esperanza Spalding and Joy and Kingfish when Mariah's on that perch. You know, we don't really have a moment where Bushmaster...
And Marley when Tilda...
Yeah, well, yeah, we don't have a moment when Bushmaster really gets to pick the music, but when we have, you know, Stephen Marley, that's when the transition begins because we had that really great moment when Tilda walks in the club and Stephen Marley is performing the acoustic moment, which was incredible. And we had to we were running out of time, we had to steal that shot. So Rashad Ernesto Green, shout out to him because he was able to capture so much with that. But then when we have Bushmaster Ascendant and Stephen Marley's playing Chase Them, it's just like, it's such a deep moment of ascension that's really cool. And then with Luke, I mean, of course, his first guest is Rakim. And having Rakim actually perform a song about Luke Cage when Luke Cage is there was just this moment of like, yo, like, you know, the 16-year-old me was freaking out as much as the 45-year-old me. Like, I cannot believe, like, this is basically the merger of me as a hip-hop fan in addition to being able to enjoy this moment as a writer and just like you kind of imagine something, and then when you see it brought to life, it's better than anything that I or we collectively as a writing and producing staff could have ever imagined.